Okay, so over the weekend, there was this post that went viral on social media. This gentleman who owns a Proton e.MAS 7 drove it from KL to JB and got stranded. Right, so from the pictures of that car, it shows that variant with 345 kilometers of WLTP range. So the poster said that his journey was measured at 290 kilometers, but the car ran out of battery at 270 kilometers. And he had to be towed back home where he got the car recharged. So the question that got people thinking, is this false advertising from Proton? Or is it miseducated use of his car? So my take on it is, without blaming, without wanting to blame anybody, right? I would say this. Number one, considering that he was going on the highways, and I'm assuming that this gentleman lawfully kept to speed limits, which means that he was averaging 90 to 110 kilometers per hour the whole duration. Maybe he had some breaks along the way, but he kept at about 90 to 100 kilometers per hour, or 110. Even in that context, right, for him to push the car as far as 270 kilometers, that's pretty impressive. It's actually pretty damned good. Why do I say that? Even though it falls well short of the tested mileage. Why do I say that? You see, the thing is, the WLTP test cycle, even though it is a much more realistic, real-world representation of test cycle compared to the older NEDC test cycle, right? It is still, number one, a lab-conducted test. Number two, it is a fixed condition whereby the cars are tested, yes, across a variety of conditions, right, over a 24 kilometer distance, whereby they are tested, right, X number of percentage on town driving, X number of percentage on highway driving, and speeds actually go all the way up to 130 kilometers in certain stretches. But on average, the car moves at only about 40. The average speed of the whole journey is about 46 kilometers per hour. All right, so what happens that when they test an EV, they will run this cycle, right, of about 30 minutes, 23 about kilometers, and average speed of about 46 kilometers per hour, all right, at various speeds and all that, right? They will run this again and again and again and again until the battery dies. Okay, now the car is tested stationary, means that the car is fixed in one position, but they also have multipliers in place that allow them to calculate back the effects of aerodynamic drag, which is a very, very important factor here at play, all right, which I will elaborate later. So at the end of the day, right, even though, let's assume that the measurements, that the formula correctly takes into account the factors of air drag, of aerodynamic of wind resistance into the thing, all right? Fact of the matter is, in terms of overall energy usage, it is still pretty low, okay? Because they are still on average, the cars on average traveling about 40 over kilometers per hour. It is a very, very different ball game compared to sustaining 110, 110 kilometers per hour for a prolonged distance, in which case we all know by experience EVs are disadvantaged. Now, I did a post on Facebook and Threads. There were people who commented and say, Well, ICE also same. ICE also, on highways, the engine has to work against drag. But here's the thing. In my experience, driving EVs on highways, okay, I've always seen the range shrink. But when I take my 20-year-old BMW with an old six-cylinder engine on highways, even if I average 130, 140 kilometers per hour, I can see the projected range can grow from 400 to 700 kilometers per full tank. So it is very and I've seen this happen across many cars. So it is very obvious that on highways, there is no two ways about it. A combustion engine car is at an advantage. Now, this is my video here is not to diss EVs. I'm not here to say that EVs are superior or ICE are superior. If you are taking that argument, you are totally missing the point. What we want to know is, what is more important for us to know is, EVs and combustion engine vehicles are totally different appliances. They are totally different things, right? Even though they serve the same function, car, right? But the execution is totally different. And they have totally different strengths, totally different weaknesses. So if you are a smart owner, right, you want to maximize your ownership experience, you want to take into account of all these factors. That is why for today, for based on today's technology, I do not recommend, EVs as your only vehicle. So if let's say you only have space in your carport for one vehicle, EVs are just not a great solution. But if you have, let's say, like, if you have a 2-car garage, 3-car garage, it makes sense to have, it's okay to have one EV as an urban runabout, right? So coming back to the case of that e.MAS 7, why do I say 270 kilometers is actually pretty impressive? So we do a bit of math here. And here's the thing. Aerodynamic drag. Okay, the formula for aerodynamic drag, or rather the relationship between aerodynamic drag is that aerodynamic drag increases exponentially with speed. So if you double your speed, your aerodynamic drag increases 4 times, right? And the aerodynamic drag from 100 kilometers per hour to 130 kilometers per hour, the difference is effectively double. Okay, so let's put it this way. So it means that, right, so even if the WLTP test cycle correctly factors in aerodynamic drag, it is based on an average speed of 46 kilometers per hour. This e.MAS 7 must have been traveling minimum 90 kilometers per hour, double. So the car would have been trying to overcome 4 times the wind resistance, okay? And 270 kilometers over 345. That is still at least 70% of its advertised range. So that is why I say it's very impressive, because the car has had to overcome 4 times the wind resistance, but it still delivered 70% of its advertised range. I think that's pretty good. Okay, so the reality of EV ownership to me is this. Okay, now I don't own an EV yet, but I would say, now of course there's the one area where a lot of other EV owners pointed out is that this owner neglected to observe the distance all EVs have projected distance on their cars. On the instrument cluster, all EVs have the indicated charge level on the instrument cluster. So really, there is actually no excuse to not have recharged the EV along the way home. Okay, so that part really is on the owner. That is really on the owner, because according to the post, right, his overall journey was 290 kilometers. The projected range was 345. That is actually a very, very narrow margin, because it does not, because you need to have very, very smooth this traveling in order to be able to cover that kind of distance. If you, and the thing is that along the way things can happen. You can have detours, you can have stops and all that. All these consume batteries. And don't forget, you along the way, you probably are using air conditioning as well. It could have been a hot day, aircon would have switched on full blast. So there are a lot of factors at play where where I would say that the owner certainly has to take certain responsibility in, number one, not watching the charge levels. Okay, number two, yeah, for simply not watching the charge levels. So even not, let's put it this way lah. Normal behavior, let's assume 300 projected range, right, kilometers, right? It's about the kind of driving range of a Myvi or an Axia, that size of car, right? So most people would normally refuel their cars once they see half tank, quarter tank, right? So if you are driving an EV, why should that not be different? Why should that be different? Why should we not follow the same guidelines, right? When you're especially you're on a highway, when you see your battery levels hitting 1/3, 1/4, time to watch out for the next recharge station. Okay, if you still have a lot of journey to go. And as we all know, okay, precisely because the EV infrastructure in Malaysia is still not matured, it is imperative that as an EV driver, you must be able to give yourself very, very generous margins when you are traveling a long distance with an EV. You do not want to have, I would say that if I'm on the highway, I do not want to have at any point in time less than 150 or 100 kilometers of projected range left on my EV, on my screen at any time. Even when I'm driving a combustion engine car, right, I also will not allow the projected range to go below 100, 150, let alone an EV. Okay, so that's my thoughts on the Proton e.MAS 7 stranded on the highway topic. Right, I think definitely this could have been firstly, I think that for the e.MAS 7 to have hit 270 kilometers on a highway, right, given that the car would have averaged at least 90 to 100 kilometers per hour, if you look at the physics at play, you will find that actually it is not bad. Okay, and number two, simply put, as a car owner, whatever car you are driving, you just need to take the strengths and weaknesses of your cars into account. For me, I still don't feel ready to take an EV out on a long distance drive. In town driving, let's say, for example, going to work, sending my kids to school, picking them up from school, I think EVs are fantastic because it's so quiet. You know, it's the pickup and takeoff is effortless. It's lovely. But on town driving, I would still stick with the good old-fashioned combustion engine at any time, because it is still way more convenient to refuel than it is to recharge the battery. Okay, so that's my thoughts, but do share with me what you think. Let me know in the comment section below. And of course, as a plug, if you have cars that you are looking to buy or to sell, do join my WhatsApp community. The link is in the description section below. Right, join the WhatsApp community, and you would see every day we will flash one car for sale. Or if you have a car that you want to sell and you want to get back at least 85 to 90% of your market value, join the community and drop a PM to the community admin, and we will help you sell your car. All right, and at the same time you still get access to the full facilities, as you know, the same convenience as trading to a used car dealer, but you get back 85 to 90% of your car's final transacted price. All right, so that's it from me today. Until my next video, take care, stay safe, I'll see you soon.